people with lower IQs are more suited to more repetitive jobs. Under 87, is there something? Well, no. Right. That's a big problem. And it's something our society has not addressed at all. Jobs for people with IQs of less than 85 are very, very rare. So what the hell are those people supposed to do? It's like it's 15% of the population. What are they supposed to do? Well, we better figure it out, because one of the things that's happening too is that as the high IQ tech geeks get a hold of the world, the demand for cognitive power is increasing, not decreasing, right? You want to be a teller? Well, you know, those checkout machines, they're not so simple. So the US government, I think I told you this at one point already, it's illegal to induct anyone into the US Army if they have an IQ of less than 83, right? It's about 10% of the population. Because the US Army, and they've been doing IQ testing since IQ testing began, because they want everybody they can possibly get into the Army, because in peacetime, they use it as a way of moving people up the socioeconomic ladder, and in wartime, well, obviously, you need as many soldiers as you can get your hands on. And so you're not going to be any pickier than you have to be. So when the US Army says it's illegal to induct anybody into the armed forces if they have an IQ of less than 83, then you know that they've done it for absolute necessity. Right? And when people have made a finding that contradicts what they want to hear, and they're doing it out of absolute necessity, you can be reasonably true that it's one of those facts that just won't bloody well go away. And so you might think, well, if there's nothing for someone with an IQ of less than 83 to do in the Army, what makes you think that there's something that they can do in the general population? And then the issue is, you know, because the conservatives will say, well, they should just work harder. It's like, sorry, that ain't going to fly. And the liberals will say, well, there's no difference between people anyhow, and you can just train people to do everything. And that's wrong. So they're both wrong, and they're seriously wrong. And the fact that neither side of the political perspective will take a good, cold, hard look at this problem means that we're going to increasingly have a structural problem in our societies, because we're complexifying everything so rapidly that you can't find employment unless you're intelligent. You guys are really going to face this, you know. Lawyers are disappearing like mad. And the reason for that is, you can look it up online. Increasingly, you can do things yourself if you're smart. And so, like, the working class people have been wiped out pretty nicely over the last 30 years by automation and various other things. It's the low end of the white collar class that's coming up next. So I'm not saying that lawyers are in the low end, but low-end lawyers are in the low end of the white collar class. So there's still going to be plenty of positions for people who are creative and fast on their feet and super smart. In fact, those people are going to have all the money, and that's already happening to a great degree. You know, because if you're smart and you can use a computer, you're so smart it's just absolutely unbelievable, right? And if you can't use a computer, and lots of people, and I don't mean, you know, you can open Word, that isn't what I mean. I mean, maybe I mean you can program, and if you can't program, well, you're right at the next end. So if you haven't got that with you, you're going to be left behind. Hey, what's the biggest employment category? Driver. Think about it. What's Tesla doing? What are all the AI guys working on as fast as they possibly can? Driverless cars. No problem, except that's the biggest employment category for men. So what are those guys going to do? Yeah, they're going to sit home and, you know, be miserable with their wives and take opiates because they have chronic pain problems. Right, nasty. And you might think, well, could they think up something else to do? Well, if you have an IQ of 83 or less, you're not going to be doing a lot of thinking about something else to do. You know, that isn't how it works, because you're more of a, you're an act person, not a thinking person, roughly speaking. You know, and so if you have a task at hand, especially if you're conscientious, you can diligently go about it. But, you know, I've tried to train people with IQs of 80 and less to do what I would consider tasks that one of you could learn to do in 10 minutes and never make a mistake again. And it's like tens of hours with bare minimum mastery of the tasks. So, yeah, it's an ugly situation, no doubt about it. It's a hell of a thing. If you can figure out how to raise people's fluid IQ, you will be a billionaire. But you won't be able to do it because it looks like it's impossible. But you never know. You know, maybe someone will crack it at some point, but we certainly haven't yet. So the issue of how to raise IQ, man, that's a killer. No one knows how to do it. I can tell you how to stop your IQ from decreasing as you get older. That's not so bad, because it does that. Fluid IQ decreases from the time you're 20 and pretty rapidly. It's physical health is the best preventative. So exercise, physical exercise. Weirdly enough, you know, you'd think, well, why? Well, your brain uses oxygen like mad, right? And it needs to be kept clean and well oxygenated. And physical exercise, both like weightlifting, so anaerobic and aerobic exercise both seem to be very, very effective at staving off cognitive declines across the lifespan. So that's a really useful thing to know, because that's the only thing we know that does that.